climate change. Hundreds of Australian companies and dozens of unions are supporting staff who plan to join the global protest.
And while climate change is a serious issue, young people are using humour to rally support and engage others across a range of social media platforms. Technology reporter Ariel Bogle met up with some of them.
Hello, Jess.
Well, that's embarrassing.
Working with animals can be tricky.
Because of the melting sea ice.
But for this young Victorian farmer, it's key to promoting the planet to her peers.
When I make videos with pretty pictures and cute animals and a dramatic message on a social media app that they use, they become interested in what I am saying.
Tara Belrose is directing her climate campaign squarely at her generation.
If I can get the idea that their future is being impacted by what we are doing today, that maybe they might take an interest.
The 21-year-old has a huge following on YouTube and now on TikTok, the wildly popular Chinese-owned video app.
This is a peaceful protest by young people for their future,
where users bypass traditional gatekeepers like parents and the media.
It's actually old school in that you need to entertain and engage people in order to get them to pay attention to your message, and that's what TikTok does so beautifully.
I guess the Gen Z millennial thing is to make a joke or make a meme where the humour isn't explicit.
19-year-old Grace Vegasana came to climate activism through a series of savvy political memes.
I saw these memes about environmental issues and especially climate justice, and I was like, wait, these are actually really big issues in society.
It's not always easy putting yourself out there on these platforms, but for those willing to take a stand, the risks of not doing so are far greater.
We're terrified of the future, and the best way to cope with that, honestly, is by laughing at it sometimes.
They're hoping the memes pay off on the streets tomorrow. Ariel Bogle, ABC News.
Let's speak now to Kirsten Hunter, the Managing Director at Future Super, who joins us in the studio. Kirsten, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
You're one of the businesses that's getting behind this climate strike. It's going to be, if it takes place on the scale that's predicted, is going to be a massive hit to national productivity. A lot of leaders around the country, business operators, politicians are not happy about this. So why are you taking part?
Why are we taking part? Well, Future Super was formed to take action on climate change. We are a superannuation fund that believes that part of our role in providing a future for our members is to provide them with a future that's free from climate change and inequality. We decided to take part in the student strike for climate that are happening tomorrow across the country after some requests from our staff asking us if they could take work off and attend the strikes. So we made the decision very early on to close our doors for the day to allow our staff to attend because we didn't want them to feel that they had to choose between a paycheck and the planet.
The main aim of a strike, though, is to disrupt operations and to bring attention to the issue at hand. But if the whole company closes down, that's not much of a disruption to any operation, is it?
Yeah, that's right. This is a different kind of strike, though, rather than a historical labour strike, which is striking against the employer. This is a strike organised by students against the government. So the students are calling on the government to take action on climate change. They're asking the government to commit to providing no new fossil fuels projects, to providing a commitment to get to 100% renewable energy by 2030, and to provide a just transition for those communities that are going to be impacted by the change. So it is different to a traditional strike, and it is less aimed at causing a disruption, causing interruption to normal business or flow of traffic and those kind of things, and more about standing together in solidarity and sending a strong message to the government.
So why not do it on a Saturday, for instance, when kids don't have to be at school and perhaps the business burden is not as great for those employers who will be losing staff to this strike?
It is a good question, but these strikes have been organised globally by school students. And so for them to strike, it does have to happen on a school day. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of kids gathering together in a field to talk about climate change.
I read, too, that some of the companies that are joining this campaign, and I think I read something about it's over 2,000 companies globally, they've joined this campaign. They hadn't really taken a stand on climate change previously. So why are they joining the strike now?
It's a great question. At last count, we've had over 2,400 businesses take the pledge at Not Business as Usual to support their employees to attend the strikes. And they range from businesses that are B Corps, that are historically more focused on their purpose and their impact, through to single operator businesses operating in small country towns all over Australia. And the reason why these businesses have chosen to support their employees to attend the strikes is simple. They see the future that's coming for us if our government doesn't act on climate change, and they want to support their people to participate in the strikes and send a message to the government that we want action.
Fair Work Australia says that people can't just sort of show up at the strike and not tell their employer. You actually have to have made arrangements, put in for an annual leave day or for unpaid leave. You can't just sort of show up. And these are quite serious considerations from an industrial relations point of view. What do you think of that? I mean, is it necessary? I mean, do you encourage people sort of to organise this with their employer, or is it a case of causing that kind of disruption and having that sort of spontaneity to the whole movement?
The Not Business as Usual campaign has really been targeted at business leaders. So we are standing together as leaders of businesses, as employers, to tell the people who work for us that it's okay for them to attend the climate strikes.
What is the record of the companies that have decided to join the strike? What is the record of their, when it comes to the environment? What is their environmental footprint?
Look, it's really varied. We have companies from all sorts of operation, be it finance, travel, startup tech companies, fashion, and the impact of those companies on the climate as individual companies is really varied, as is the impact that each of us as individuals have on the climate as well. But the most important thing about that is that the impact that each of these businesses has on the climate is really dwarfed by the impact that our government is having by continuing to invest in fossil fuels and not funding the renewable energy that's going to take us into a cleaner energy future.
Is that cheap participation then? I mean, to kind of stand up for a day and say, hey, we're here, we're seen, but ultimately some of these companies perhaps don't have a great footprint themselves.
I don't believe it is cheap participation. I think what we as a business community is saying is that we can't solve the problem ourselves, but we can all do our part. And we think, or we recognise that it's not business as usual for school students to have to walk out from school to ask the government to take action on climate change. It's not business as usual for those students to have to turn around and ask the adults to support them. And as a result, we're not going to be doing business as usual. We are standing together with the students to send a strong message to the government that we want them to take action on climate change. And we, as a business community, I think a lot of the time we get used as an excuse for inaction on climate. It's often said that taking action on climate might impact the economy or might cause business to suffer. But this is the business community standing up and saying we don't want to be an excuse for inaction any longer. We want to see the government take action, and we want the government to take action according to what the school students are asking for.
It's very admirable, of course, that these businesses, over 2,000 businesses around the world, are standing up to make their statement, of course. Do you think there will be, or will the students hold them accountable going forward after this one day, after tomorrow?
I hope so. I mean, I think the students have sent a really strong message to the government and to business that now is the time. And if we act now and we act together, then we can still do something. What I really hope is that this campaign, having 2,400 businesses pledged that this is not business as usual, that they'll support the strikes, that this might be the first step for many businesses who might not have seen their role as a business leader to be to be talking about climate or other social issues.
The best way to sort of make a statement is at an election, isn't it? And to vote in the MPs and the government that you want. This government was democratically elected. And what the result of that is the sort of political inaction around climate and energy policy that we've seen so far. How do you explain that gap between this sort of movement of people rising up versus the government that we have, the MPs that we have, many of whom have expressed this deep discontent about this strike taking place? How do you explain that division?
Oh, look, that's a very complicated question, isn't it? But elections are not single issue things. It's not a plebiscite based on climate. If it were, then I'm sure that overwhelmingly Australians would support climate action. As far as whether or not MPs from either party are supporting the strikes tomorrow, there are a lot of MPs who are supporting the strikes. There are a lot who've come out in favour. A lot of governments even have given the public service permission to take time out from their workday and attend the strikes. So I think it's far from being a universal thing that even MPs from the government are against the strikes.
Just a final question, and this is an issue that rises up during elections. I wonder if this risks being seen as a strike by city people, latte sippers, if you will, kind of taking on these climate issues that really do affect regional communities that rely particularly on mining and coal and all that kind of thing. Is there a way to bridge that gap so climate doesn't become a divisive issue along kind of geographical lines and socioeconomic sort of lines?
I mean, I think there is, and that is part of the role of government to provide that just transition. And it's no coincidence that's one of the 3 demands that the students are asking the government to act on. We recognise that the transition to renewable energy is going to cost the communities that are currently working in coal, but if we act together to support those communities, to retrain, to provide solutions for them, then it doesn't have to come to their detriment. As far as the earlier part of your question, whether it's city versus country, what we've seen through the Not Business as Usual campaign is that this issue crosses all of those borders. We've had many businesses from country areas pledging to support, many in cities. We've had businesses from towns that are small and far away from any strikes. So far from being something that is just a city-related thing, it's something that affects the country as well.
Kirsten Hunter, it's good to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.